Coming up on today's show, lots of news to get to in the NHL, including a coaching change in Montreal, and the Leafs head out west. How do I like their chances this weekend? Well, you'll find out on today's Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother from TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me is Dave Morassutti, my new official co-host here at the Locked On Leafs podcast, a writer for the NHLPA, an editor over at Sportsnet. Dave, lots to get into today, so why don't we just get right into it? We are going to chat about what happened, what's going on with the Maple Leafs. We're going to update you on practice. There's a status updates to a couple of players, and that could factor into tomorrow's game against the Flames. Also going to preview that game for you guys as well, but just some real pressing, almost breaking news going down today all around the league. A couple of things. We'll start with the Dom Ducharme, and then we'll get to Brad Marchand. He's been suspended, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but Montreal, man, a fall from grace from going to the Stanley Cup final to firing their general manager and now firing their head coach. Dom Ducharme out, Marty St. Louis in? What? Were you just as perplexed by this as I was? Not the fact that Ducharme got fired. I think we were all anticipating that. To be honest, I think it was about a month too late. But, Marty St. Louis? Huh?
Yeah, I don't understand how... Look, I know Martin St. Louis is a Hall of Famer for what he did in his playing career. I look at... If you're someone on the Montreal staff right now, how do you think it feels to get passed over as an interim... Remember, he's an interim head coach for a guy who was coaching Pee Wee hockey. Pee Wee.
That's what I mean, Luke Richardson seemed like a fine coach to me when he filled in for Ducharme last year. Remember Ducharme ended up getting COVID midway through the playoffs, and he missed essentially parts of two series, the main parts of two series, especially in that Vegas series. And Richardson's the one who kind of brought them to steered them through that mess. Why wouldn't you give him the opportunity the rest of the way? Why would you bring in an outsider and somebody who you said has no NHL coaching experience, not as an assistant, not as a head coach, nothing. He was a special assistant the power play for the Columbus Blue Jackets with John Tortorella. That was the closest that he ever got to being on an NHL bench, and now he's running an NHL bench. Fun story about Marty St. Louis' coaching career. You said he's coaching Pee Wee. I was actually doing play-by-play for a tournament out in Minnesota a couple of years ago, and Marty St. Louis and his team, the Mid-Fairfield Junior Rangers, or the Connecticut Mid-Field Fairfield Junior Rangers, something like that, was there, and that's his son's team. His son, Mason St. Louis, decent little hockey player. So he's coaching his son, and this was 2 or 3 years ago before the pandemic. And I remember seeing him at this tournament, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Coaching his son, and must be fun. He's, freshly a couple of years out of retirement. And here he is 3 years after that, now behind an NHL bench out of nowhere. It's just mind-boggling to me.
Can I just say this? And I don't like to accuse teams of tanking. I mean, no one can not accuse Montreal of tanking with the way the season's gone.
Right.
Come on. If it seems just too it's not as obvious, but it just seems just too.
But why would Marty want this job? This is what I don't understand. If the whole point is to bring him in here to tank, why would he want his reputation to take a hit like that? This is what I don't understand. They were talking about this on Overdrive today about how maybe he's some sort of plant by the organization. He has strong ties to both Jeff Gordon and new GM Kent Hughes. And is he some sort of plant? Like supposed to report to those guys exactly what the problem is in the room by being there and being close to the situation? I think that's a little far-fetched. I don't think that he would risk his reputation in hockey to do that, to be kind of a Benedict Arnold to his players in a way. Like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The entire thing stinks a little bit. And we're talking about a team that's won 8 games this year, 8 out of 45 games. That's it. This is historically bad. I actually saw a tweet that this team, in terms of goal share this season, so their goal differential, goals for against, goals against, they're on pace with the expansion Thrashers in goal share differential. That's how bad this team has been. It's just porous. And then they go out and get a random coach who is coaching Pee Wee and Marty St. Louis.
I understand that there's at this point there's nothing left to be thought about for this season, but also with Martin St. Louis, you don't get I know guys get quite a few chances in the NHL. Is this really how you want to get yourself in there, especially in a market like Montreal where everything is looked at with a fine-tooth comb? I don't get to.
Yeah, and it's not like just because you had a good hockey career doesn't mean that you're going to be a great coach. Wayne Gretzky, exactly. Wayne Gretzky, the greatest player to ever live, arguably, was a god-awful coach. Like, he was dog bleep as a coach. Like, I don't think they made the playoffs at all while he was there. They may have, but they were a terrible, terrible team. He wasn't a good coach. And it's just is what it is. There's certain qualities that you need to be a coach. Typically, it's actually the grinders and the guys who had to fight their way, who don't have that natural ability, natural skill, who had to learn the game and think the game a different way. They turn out to be the good coaches at the end of the day, realistically, funny enough. And Alex Burrows is one of those guys who wasn't physically gifted or physically talented, but he turned into be a coach, and he's currently on that staff. He speaks French. I'm surprised Alex Burrows wasn't a guy that they decided to just fill this vacant interim head coaching vacancy. I'm more surprised. I guess I'm super surprised that they decided to go Marty St. Louis, but I'm just surprised in general that they went external and brought somebody in as opposed to promoting from within, whether it was Luke Richardson, who's done it in the past for Montreal, or Alex Burrows, who's also currently there, but at least he's a French Canadian, which is important in that market. A lot of this just doesn't make any sense. And like you said, doesn't matter. Team's going nowhere this season. They suck. They stink. But it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, like even when the Leafs were tanking in 2015, at least they brought in a reputable interim head coach in Peter Horachek.
Yeah.
Who had some, you can see, okay, this is a guy that's going to actually benefit the organization in some ways. They might not win, but he's going to instill some good things. Although, I don't know if you remember the whole...
Well, does Marty St. Louis know what to do, know what to say when, let's say, Nick Suzuki's struggling? Does he know what to do, know what to say if Tyler Toffoli's struggling? Or if Brendan Gallagher isn't getting it done, or if he needs to get more out of Jeff Petrie, who's having a tough season. Does he know how to do that? Has he ever had to do that with somebody who has hair on their chest? No, he hasn't. He literally has not. And this is where it's just ridiculous. I don't understand, man. We'll see what happens. I think they're in action tonight. They play the Washington Capitals, and not too long before Toronto and Montreal meet up again. And by the looks of it, looks like the Leafs are going to have a lot more fun than they did last spring when Toronto and Montreal faced off against each other. In some sick way, you got to be loving this as a Leaf fan, just seeing all the turmoil going on in Montreal this season after what they did to the Maple Leafs last year. Speaking of turmoil and somebody who did a lot to the Maple Leafs over the course of his career, Brad Marchand got a suspension. But before I tell you about that, I got to tell you about one of today's show sponsors, and that is betonline.net. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple of weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, the NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live, real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Mike DiStefano, a.k.a. Hal's brother, as some like to call me, along with my co-host, now Dave Morassutti, and we'll be bringing you episodes each and every day, Monday through Friday. You can catch the audio versions wherever you get your podcast, but we're also now up on YouTube. So, hey, let's wave to our friends who are watching on YouTube. What's going on, guys? If you want to watch mine and Dave's weird, awkward wave, he stopped, but I'm still going.
You want to get the Italian one? Like,
let's give it the Italian wave here, that was just a whole bunch of words for the listening audience. So you're going to have to go check out Locked On Leafs to see all of the hand signals and gestures that we send to each other as us Italian men navigate the Leafs season. But yeah, thank you for listening to Locked On Leafs. It's a daily listen now here, so make sure that you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. Before we went to break, I said Brad Marchand, the verdict is in. He gets 6 games for his antics on Tristan Jarry. Really quickly, let's touch on this Brad Marchand news before we get to some Leafs updates and preview this game that they got going down tonight against the Calgary Flames. But Brad Marchand, 6 games. What'd you think of it? What was your first thought when you saw that number come across your screen?
I wasn't surprised especially when they did an in-person hearing. I mean, look, we saw what happened with Jason Spezza, and in-person hearings always get dinged quite a bit, and we know.
Well, hold on, because in-person doesn't guarantee it has to be more than 5 games.
But
it just allows them to do more than 5 games, because we saw there was one recently that wasn't in person and only got like 3 or 4 games. I can't recall exactly what it was, but I often see this. People get confused that because it's an offered in person, it's going to be 5 or more. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be that number.
What I will say, though, on top of that, is this is Marchand's 2nd suspension this season. Like, if you expected him to get a slap on the wrist, and you know what? Actually, I was listening to the Sportsnet Hockey Central panel, and they even said, considering that this was a goaltender, and you know how the NHL is about trying to protect goaltenders, this made it a little bit easier to go with a higher number. And I think you heard Bruce Cassidy say that the lack of discipline, there was nothing really to help Marchand not get a pretty hefty suspension.
No, you're right. I'll say this, though. 6 games to me was still a little harsh. I thought, like, if I would have said maybe 3 games, like 2 games realistically, but because there's a rap sheet there, maybe 3 or 4 games. 6 games seemed a little bit much to me, because it wasn't like aggressive. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a massive blow to the head. The act was there, and the act is totally unwarranted and uncalled for. Swinging his stick towards, his upper body area, clearly unwarranted and uncalled for. But it's not like there was much maliciousness. There may have been intent, but there wasn't much maliciousness, which I think is for me, for whatever reason, the way that I process things, the difference between a 4 and a 6 game suspension, let's say.
Yeah, like if he didn't get 6, would I have been upset? No. If he got 3, I think that would have been fine too. He wasn't going to escape punishment. Maybe 6 is egregious, but maybe that's just, you know what, they're telling Brad Marchand, cool it, man. Like,
yeah. I think, the fact that he's like a multi time offender, like if this was maybe anybody else not named Tom Wilson, probably isn't getting close to 6 games. It probably is just a 2 or 3 gamer.
And it probably doesn't boil over to that point either, where we're having this conversation, because I don't see many
Well,
players.
'cause here's the thing, and actually, ODOT brought this up on Overdrive 2 today. He didn't even think that this was suspension worthy in general, and a big crux of his argument, which I agree to an extent. I think the fact that he did it to a goaltender, but he said, look how many times punches happen in scrums. Guys just get punched in the back of the head all the time, and no one thinks anything of it. Now, the fact that it's to a goaltender, it's more isolated and it's a little bit more out there. So I think it's more glaring. So you're going to get a suspension of some kind. But these are acts, I guess you could say, that happen quite often. And the fact that it got 6 games for kind of, you know, daily occurrences seemed a little bit harsh.
I will say, and on top of that, you saw what happened earlier in the game to Patrice Bergeron.
Yeah.
You wonder, is that a retaliatory or in some way just sending a bit of a message to
Could
the
be a
NHL? We know how the NHL feels about those things as well.
He was being a donkey the entire game, though. Like, did you see?
The slapping of the stick out of the.
Yeah, like Jari was trying to give a puck to a fan, tried to flip it over the glass, and he literally came over and slashed his stick and like hit it down and was like, "No, you're not doing that. No way." For whatever reason. And then even was it Sidney Crosby ended up breaking his twig and then tried to skate off to the bench to get a new one. And he's like an offensive lineman blocking him, like not allowing him to get to the bench, which to me, is that not interference? And there's no penalty on that play. But anyway, it was just like a bizarre, it was like, what are you doing? Why are you being a donkey? And then it just kind of boiled over to that incidents. And I wonder if, all of that, along with the Bergeron and this being a possible retaliation play, I wonder if that all kind of got, jumbled up into the reason why it ended up being the full 6 games. But hey, you can weigh in on this conversation either on Twitter at @Make_Canuck or at D_Morassutti or at Locked On Leafs on Twitter. And also if you're watching on YouTube, hit us down in the comments below. Do you think 6 games was fair? Just a little bit much? Give us your thoughts on that suspension. But we're going to do some updates from Leafs practice now. The Maple Leafs will be in Calgary taking on the Flames tonight. Should be a really good game, and we'll tee that one up in just a moment. But a couple of updates from practice today, Dave. Maple Leafs Nation, give out a collective sigh. Let's do it on the count of 3. Let's do a collective sigh. 1, 2, 3. Matthews declared himself good to go for tomorrow.
Where's my cross? I should have showed the cross that I was praying to.
Just hold the pepper. You got the pepper cross? You got a pepper on it or what?
I don't want the malocchio. I got it somewhere,
No, but someone should have gave Matthews the pepper. Maybe Spezza gave him his chain with the pepper on it to ward off anything from entering his body or hurting him. For any Woodbridge fans listening out there, I'm sure for anybody else listening, they're like, what the hell are these two donkeys talking about? These two, I don't know. But Auston Matthews, really good news that it's not a serious injury, and it looks like he's going to play tomorrow. He declared himself ready to go. Whether or not the Leafs, I guess, they could take some extra precautions, but I'm not sure they're going to be able to do that, to be quite honest with you. A couple other updates. Jake Muzzin still not technically cleared to play, but could play by tomorrow. He's to be determined as we sit here now, so he could play. But Wayne Simmons wasn't at practice today, and I don't know if you saw this, but there's a slight worry all over Twitter about what may be wrong with Wayne Simmons. What happened to Wayne Simmons? No need to fret, ladies and gentlemen. Wayne Simmons, the reason why he was not at practice today, he and his wife had a new baby, newborn, come today. So, congratulations to the Simmons family, bringing in a brand new, I want to say it was a daughter. Don't quote me on it, but they had a new baby today. So he apparently is going to join the team at some point in the road trip. It might not be in time for the Calgary game. It may be in the game against Vancouver on Saturday. So if Simmons is not there for the Calgary game and Muzzin can't be there, or if Simmons isn't there, the team is going to have to go with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. And I believe Matthews is counted in that 11 forward group. So if both Simmons and Matthews are not able to play and Muzzin is not able to play, they're going to be down some guys because they're in a cap situation where they're only carrying one extra player. I believe that is Travis Dermott at the very moment. Because you got guys who were there earlier taking those spots, like Nick Ritchie, who's a 13th forward for a little bit. You had who's the other, Kyle Clifford, who was up there for a little, but with no more taxi squad, which was kind of put there's a kibosh to the taxi squad after the All-Star break. They were sent down to the minors. They don't have a traveling squad to help them in times like this. So they're going to be shorthanded as they go out west. So hopefully no injuries, and hopefully these guys are able to play because, like I said, at best, they'll be good to go. But if Wayne Simmons isn't there, which probably unlikely, literally had the kid and within 24 hours going to leave your wife, probably not, but you never know. Depending on I guess if she's completely healthy and the baby's home and fine, I suppose I'm sure the family will help out quite a bit. I'm sure that is very common, I guess, in the NHL and in pro sports in general. But if he doesn't, it'll be 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully everyone's good to go, though. Like literally all of these players are good to go.
I don't think it's too bad with the 11 forward, 7 defensemen because they've done it before, and like the fourth line doesn't. It's like it's Wayne Simmons. It's not like a player that takes a lot of ice time, and the Leafs have enough guys that they can kind of spread the ice time around enough that it's not going to be too overbearing. But over a road trip, I don't know if you want to do that for a whole road trip. So maybe they have to consider their options after tonight's game.
Problem is, I don't know what options they have. They're so up against the cap, and they want to try and accrue as much space before the deadline.
True.
Like this is a big reason why they're doing it, right? I think they only have like 500,000 cap space right now. You can't even bring anybody up. That's less than league minimum. So they're at that point where now with everybody healthy, it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's a blessing because your team's healthy and there and playing, and it's your best squad. But at the same time, because of the cap structure, because of the flat cap world and being right up against it, you don't have extra bodies to fill in should a couple injuries pile up because of the stupid emergency recall rule where you have to play shorthanded before you can bring somebody up. Still don't quite understand why that's a thing. But anyways, c'est la vie. It is what it is. But we'll see. We'll see. But those are the updates from practice today. Why don't we get into this game? We got the Flames and the Leafs going down tonight. But before we do, why don't we hear, David, a word from today's show sponsor?
Yeah, so today's episode is brought to you by RockAuto. So if you're ever looking to, get those orders for those car parts and you don't want to wait around for too long, and if you have a computer with access to rockauto.com in your home, in your pocket, you can help yourself help to save some money, whether it's, it can be anything from new tires, tail lamps, brake parts, new carpet, motor oil. Rock Auto has you covered, okay? So make sure you go and check out their website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. So go to rockauto.com right now, and you'll see all the available parts for your car or truck. And make sure you use the right locked on. You write "locked on" in their "How did you hear about us" box, so they know we sent you. Because obviously they're helping us out, and we're going to help them out a little bit. So they have an amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will need at rockauto.com.
Yeah, I definitely need to. My car has been bugging or something, so I gotta figure it out and then order some parts off of Rock Auto, and then away I go. So if you're having any car troubles like I am, I've done it before where I've ordered some parts off Rock Auto, and bing bang boom, I saved about a couple $100 on my bill. So it's not bad. It's a great service. Definitely rockauto.com. It's a service that I love here and love being part of this podcast as well. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano here alongside me. I've got Dave Morassutti, and we got the Leafs and Flames in Calgary tonight. So Toronto starting their West Coast road trip. This was a game that was supposed to be played a long time ago. It was supposed to be played in December, if you recall. This was the first of, 4 or 5? I think if it was 5, maybe 6, actually. First of 6 games that ended up getting canceled or postponed due to COVID. So this is the first COVID game that is being kind of reworked here for the Maple Leafs. So Toronto going out to Calgary. How do you feel about this game?
You know what? The Calgary Flames have been a very interesting team. I think they are better than I expected. A lot more competitive. They're basically the Daryl Sutter team that many have come to expect. I know when the Leafs played them earlier in the year, there was a really tough matchup. I think actually the Flames have gone much better since then. They do rely heavily on their top line, guys like Gaudreau, Kachuk, even like at Lindholm, our buddy Manja Khan.
Funny.
Like they're a team that you don't take lightly, right? So it's gonna be a very, very tough matchup. It's not one I think that's gonna. I know the Leafs have had success against them in the past, but I think they're a different team than what the Leafs have seen in past years.
Yeah, I mean, Toronto's playing really well right now too, though, right? They're coming
Yeah.
in on a 6-game winning streak. They've won 4 in a row versus Calgary, and the game earlier in the year, it did go to overtime. It was a pretty tightly contested game. Ended up being a 2-1 game in OT. Was Vladar the goaltender of record in that game, though, as well, or was it Markstrom? Just quickly gonna check.
I actually believe it was Vladar because it
It
was
was.
another one of those backup goaltender giving the Leafs trouble. I'm pretty sure you're right on that one.
That's exactly what happened. It was Dan Vladar, or Darth Vlader, I believe, as we were calling him after that game. And stopped 35 of 37 shots that night. Ended up going into overtime, and it was Matthews who ended up scoring the goal in overtime there. So the Maple Leafs, like I said, they've coming in, they've won 4 straight, but Calgary's a good team, man. Like, this is a really, really good team. I think a saving grace, not really a saving grace, is probably a bad way to say it, but something that goes towards Toronto's favor is the fact that Calgary's playing, like, we're recording this as of now. This is Wednesday night, about 10 o'clock at night, and Calgary's playing right now. So they're going to be on night 2 of a back-to-back. They're playing the Vegas Golden Knights, who are a tough, tough team to play against. Like, they're just a rock-solid team. So they're going to be a little battered, a little bruised, a little tired. So Toronto, hopefully they can take advantage of getting a team on night 2 of a back-to-back with them being well-rested and having not played in a little bit, or since Monday. But I saw Jacob Markstrom is starting in goal tonight. So it's going to be Darth Vlader once again for the Flames tonight against the Maple Leafs. So, you can look at that in, I guess, one of 2 ways. I choose to look at it as they're going to have an upper edging goalie when it comes to Jack Campbell. But one of the things that I'm looking forward to is seeing how Campbell kind of responds and bounces back. His last outing was really good, right? Against the Devils. Thought he played fantastic after getting pulled the night before. And then he went to the All-Star break, had a great time in the All-Star break, won the save streak. Maybe that gave him a little bit of confidence too. And then ended up getting the day off, got to sit on the bench and watch Peter Mrazek, his teammate, beat his former team. Probably all smiles there. It was all smiles in practice. So now he's getting back into game form. And I'm excited to see what type of Campbell we're going to get. Because if he's turned a corner and he's kind of gone back to work, because this is basically how his season has gone, right? It's gone way up, October, November, and then it hit December, and it went on to the downslope. December into January, and now our February, it's starting to peter back upwards as we get over the All-Star break coming off that game. So I think it's going to be a fun one. I think it's going to be a good one. But Calgary, they're one of the best teams in the NHL. They really are. They're one of the best defensive teams specifically. So I think it's going to be a playoff-style, tight-checking hockey game, which is what I like to see at this point. If I'm, watching the Maple Leafs play, I want to see them succeed in those types of games because that's playoff atmosphere. That's how you're going to have to play in the playoffs. So you can do that against these teams in the regular season and find ways to get around, their stubbornness and their stickiness on defense. That bodes well. And as a jaded Leaf fan who knows exactly what happens come playoff time, typically makes me feel a little bit better. So all in all, I'm excited for the game tonight.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when I think Campbell's going to be crucial in a game like this, because I think the Leafs, when they have that time off, they don't typically get off to the best start. So I'm curious to see, if they don't get off the best start, can Campbell kind of weather the storm and keep them in it? Or is this going to be a case where the Leafs are able to, they've been waiting, they've been trying to get off the high of a good win over Carolina and try to carry that over. So I think maybe that they play Carolina first kind of helps them, actually, because Carolina is a good defensive team, kind of do the similar things that Calgary tries to do. So maybe that gives the Leafs a bit of confidence, knowing that they've already been through that with Carolina, and they should be able to handle the Flames, a team they've had a lot of success against.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we go through kind of our three keys of the game quickly before we finish things up here? I guess I'll go first with my three keys, and it's very similar to the stuff that we kind of been chatting about for the last couple of minutes. But first and foremost, the fact that we haven't really talked about that top line of Gaudreau, Tkachuk, and Lindholm yet is kind of bearing the lead, because that's the real reason why Calgary has had this amazing turnaround. They're outstanding. I saw, Mike Kelly from NHL Network and, from Sport Logic, massive analytics guy, just a bundle of information. He put out a piece and a tweet the other day that this line of Gaudreau, Tkachuk, and Lindholm have quite literally been the most productive and the best line in hockey, according to stats and analytics. A lot of people are going to say, oh, the McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog line. What about that? Well, the stats would indicate that these guys are, and we'll get a good glimpse of that tomorrow. So I think the Leafs are going to have to limit them, and that's going to take a full team effort, full five guys back checking hard. You're going to have to see the defensemen really honing in and not allowing them to get by them, not allowing any backdoor tap-ins like they kind of were giving up. Not that they were allowing the goals, but they were giving up those opportunities and those chances over the last couple of games. So limiting that line, I think, is going to be huge. And then, like I was saying before, this is one of the best defensive teams in the NHL. Their expected goals against is amongst the lowest. They just play a really tight game. So finish when you can, because I don't know how many chances that they're going to allow you to get. So when you get those good grade A opportunities in the slot and in the inner slot, make sure you finish. Put the puck in the back of the net. And then on your own side of the ice, protect the net for Jack. Don't let Tkachuk get to the net. Don't let Blake Coleman get to the net. Make sure you protect the net. Don't allow them to pounce at rebounds. Keep them out of the slot. Battle in front of the net. Battle for ice. And I think that'll go a long way to ensuring a seventh straight win for the Maple Leafs. What about yourself?
Oh, so the first one here for me is going to be, don't let Matthew Tkachuk get in your kitchen. In terms of, they got no if Muzzin's not playing and no Simmons, those are two guys that usually will keep Tkachuk in order a bit, and you're not going to have that element in the lineup. So Tkachuk knows that, and he's probably going to try to take advantage. We know what happened,
the puck flipping,
and with Campbell and the bump he took there. So I would say, don't let Matthew Tkachuk dictate that part of the game. So that's my first key. Second key for me is, let's see if Mitch Marner can keep this streak going. I think he's been the hot hand, and you're gonna have to ride that hot hand a bit more. So that's gonna be the second key. Get the magician going there, and then final key, kind of what you're saying, is that dominant trio of Tkachuk, Gaudreau, and Lindholm. Don't let them be the story, right? Make the Flames beat you with their depth, because they've had a hard time doing that this season. In the games that I've watched them play, they really don't have much outside of that top three. So I would say,
except our guy, Mangiapane.
Okay, I would say after their top six, their top two lines, it gets dicey.
Yeah, there's no offense outside the top six. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Don't let their top, try your best. And I think the Leafs have the depth to go up against it, and even defensively too. So that's going to be the key, is let your depth be your strength.
Yeah, I think so. I think the Leafs definitely have better depth than this team, scoring depth at the very least. And hey, if Mitch Marner does score and makes it 9 games in a row, he'll be just the third player. It's since 1997 to do that. Just the third player since 1997. Think about that. That's insane.
And we wouldn't think about that with Mitch Marner.
Yeah, Mitch freaking Marner. Not Austin Matthews. Mitch Marner. Crazy. All right, should be a fun one, folks. Hopefully you enjoy the game. If you want to make a wager, you can do that over at betonline.ag or .net, sorry. That'll be those lines should be up by now, I would assume. But that's to do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasting platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show at Locked On Leafs. We, Dave and I, will be back tomorrow. We'll be recapping the game against the Calgary Flames. Get you set for what's also going on for the games over the weekend. So we'll do all that and more tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.